Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Yeah, it's been a while, Nest listeners, but we are back at the best time. Leading into round one, West Coast against the Kangaroos. There is so much to talk about, Drew Jones, after a very long off-season in footy and for the Eagles in general. And for us, we haven't spoken since the end of last year, so we've been saving it all up and we're ready to go.
G'day, Garby. We're coming in fresh. I like that. And we've had some questions on Twitter saying, when are you guys coming back? When are you coming back? We just didn't want to go too early. Wanted to save it all, get our excitement all balled up and ready to go because, footy's underway in a couple of days. And on Saturday, I'll be sipping on a couple of cold liquids, watching the boys hopefully get a win over North Melbourne.
So where do the excitement levels sit? I think that's the key question to kick off with. Personally, I was pretty optimistic prior to the final practice game of a 10th to 14th finish. That was the bracket I was looking at. Those expectations have maybe dropped a little bit after a pretty ordinary performance against the Crows in the final practice game, which has just dulled enthusiasm a touch. But then you see the debutants named yesterday at the time of recording, and it lifts a little bit again. Where are you sitting, Drewy?
Yeah, I think the 4 debutants, that's given me a little lift. But you're right. The performance against Adelaide was pretty disappointing. I wonder if we'll look back at that and say, geez, like that was Adelaide sort of flexing their muscle. Potentially the Crows might be a climber this season. But yeah, it didn't come together very well. Defense, like the team defense, the system didn't stand up well against the Crows. And that was one of the big things going into the season that I think both of us and probably everyone, was hoping that we would improve because we were just picked apart so easily last season. So, yeah, that was disappointing. But, having our players fit, able to complete a proper pre-season, I heard Liam Duggan talk about this on Captain's Day. He said, we had a new game plan to execute and to implement last season. We just couldn't actually train it because we were torn apart by injuries and COVID early in the season. So at least they've actually had a proper off-season. All the noise is coming out of the club is that players have come back fitter and stronger, which is pretty normal to hear that. But we know in comparison to last year, it's probably on the money. So, yeah, there's reasons to be optimistic, but the Crows game was obviously disappointing.
Yeah, I do think the Crows will be good this season. They won 3 of their last 4, people forget, at the end of last year, and they almost beat the Swans in Sydney. So it could have been an even better record. They were really starting to get going when the season ended. They've got a really good key forward now in Darcy Fogarty, who obviously had a good game against us. They're super fit, and it seems like they came out ready to hit the preseason as if it was round 1, both practice games. So we should probably take that into account a little bit, but the ball movement was slow again. That was the worry, and we've been hearing all along that we're changing the game plan. We knew that last year. They couldn't quite implement it last year because of all the setbacks in terms of personnel, which you've mentioned and which we've spoken so much about. But it's still, there didn't seem to be enough evidence that the dial had started to move. And in our final hit out before North Melbourne, I sit back and I go, well, how much confidence can there possibly be off the back of that amongst the 22 that they can then just turn it on against North and go there and win in Melbourne? Like it probably looms as an even game either way, but it doesn't seem as if the confidence levels will be high enough to all of a sudden just produce what they've discussed for a season and a little bit now.
Yeah, I thought watching the game, we could see that they were trying to move the ball quicker out of defence. It just led to turnovers, particularly early, and the Crows were able to blow out to a big lead on the back of us making some mistakes. So probably we slowed down with our movement as a result of the fact that A, scoreboard pressure, and B, that we weren't executing. So, come Saturday afternoon at Marvel Stadium, if we're moving the ball well and North Melbourne are leaving us little holes to actually rebound and and start to get that fast footy going, we might see a different team. But at least we're seeing an attempt, to change the way we play, because obviously it can't continue how it's been the last couple of years, because the game's moving on. Yeah. The competition's moved on. We'll get spanked by teams who, like the AFL as a whole, and the good teams, and even the teams in the middle of the ladder, have never been better at keeping the ball in their front half. Like the front half defense has never been better. And at the moment, the way that we play is just literally playing into the hands of the teams that are trying to implement that. So it'll be a long year if we can't move the ball quicker out of defense.
Yeah. So what's your prediction before we get into some individual players, and there are some concerns and there are some positives, and we'll get there now. What's your prediction? Where do you think the Eagles finish as we head into round one?
I think we win 8 or 9 games.
Okay.
And there's a part of me that can see us bouncing even better than that. And probably, I've been optimistic that it could be 10, 11, 12. And maybe it's just the post-Adelaide, I felt a little less optimistic. But is it in our best interests as a club to win enough games to finish 8th, 9th, 10th? But probably not. And Nick Nat's fitness is a concern, the Achilles, and we haven't seen enough from our backup rucks to guarantee we're going to get great service in the middle if Nick Nat's not playing. So I think potentially that costs us a couple of wins. So I think 8 or 9, we win a few home games, snag a couple of, on the road and team building ones against some of the lower teams, but I don't see us challenging those top 8 sides. So I think about 8 or 9, 8 and 14 or 8 and 15.
Yeah, as I said, I was 10 to 14 and I've probably dropped now 14 down, like best case 14th, I reckon, for us. But hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we are up there and some of the older guys just produce their absolute best and a couple come through and be massive contributors and we get a good run with injury. And we've still got gun players like Barrass and McGovern is still one of the best key defensive combinations in the comp. Like if Yo and Kelly can stay fit and produce their best, they need some more support around them. But we've got 2 absolute guns in there. If Nick Nat can get on the park, we've still got a ruckman who can contribute a lot. There's no reason why Jack Darling won't have a solid season. And then if Oscar produces his best, we've got a very good key forward combination. We've still got an all-Australian half forward in Liam Ryan. Jamie Cripps had a pretty good season last season, considering how difficult it was for the forwards. Jaden Hunt comes in. Liam Duggan is obviously in the peak of his career and he's a very good player on his day. Tom Cole's back. That helps a lot. Dom Sheed's back. So there's reason to be optimistic, but you can understand why so many are tipping the Eagles to finish bottom 4. And the other big positive, Drewy, and let's get to that right now, out of the practice game, was a player who hasn't excited Eagles fans, or there isn't a player who's excited Eagles fans as much as him for a long time, and that is Ruben Genby, who I think is already our 3rd best midfielder. After Yo and Kelly, considering Shuey's issues with continuity and the fact that he might be moved to half back, I think Ruben Genby's already our 3rd best mid.
Yeah, I mean, hard to argue with you. And apart from probably Oscar Allen, I can't remember being this excited about a West Coast young player for a while.
Since Chris Judd?
Yeah, I think so. Like just the way that he moves, the way he competes. Like this is what we've been crying out for in terms of the perfect player to come into our system, into our team. He couldn't have come along at a better time, really, could he, Ruben? And the fact that he's a local, that just makes it all the better, and completely justifies now the decision from West Coast to trade out of pick 2.
Oh yeah,
there was the feeling that Elijah Hewitt was going to slip slightly back, and then you think, well, we don't need pick 2 to get Ruben Genby, so let's get them both. So full credit to them for doing that. I think I said to you, or maybe to Benny Waterworth, when we had a chat on Twitter about the draft, I said this could be our Oliver and Petrarca. Not that they may not turn out to be as good as those twos, and that's setting them a pretty high bar. But it's the goal kicking mid in Hewitt and then the inside bull in Jimby, to be able to knock them out in one draft. Like, that's potentially next 12 or 14 years they're going to be playing for West Coast. It's pretty handy just to have that in the back pocket to go. And, you know, he comes, if not as good as advertised, even better.
Yeah. I mean, it's the earliest of days, but, you know, there are many who wanted the Eagles to keep pick 2. And I understood that argument. If you go through the drafts for the last 10 years, there aren't many misses in the top 5. And there aren't many in the top 10 nowadays either, but it changes dramatically after the top 5. All of a sudden you start to get some variations in success. So I understood the argument. But as it stands right now, I know we haven't seen him play, but George Wardlaw on his own or Jinby and Hewitt? Like, come on. I think the Eagles have just produced a masterstroke here, potentially.
Yeah, I'm happy with the 2. I think no one could look at what we've got right now in terms of 2 local boys over a Victorian junior and say we haven't come out better for it. Do you think the Eagles would have taken Wardlaw, or would they have taken Sheasel? I know this is all hypothetical.
Yeah, probably Wardlaw, just because the midfield needs beefing up, and Sheasel will probably go through there. I think he'll be a star, but we just needed mids. You know, we had to get new mids in. So probably Wardlaw if they didn't have any takers and had to stick with pick 2. Or maybe they would have taken Jinby at pick 2. Who knows? There's every chance they would have. And he doesn't look out of place at pick 2 as it stands.
Yeah. No, I think, we've made the right call there, and we get to see Jinby make his debut. So he's been mixing through the middle and a bit of halfback, which is ideal. You know, for an 18-year-old, obviously he's advanced in terms of his readiness for senior football, but it works quite well he's basically going to be swapping with Shuey.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good buddy to have, to be working alongside, learning your craft, and, you know, swapping back and forth between halfback, middle and off the bench. I think, you know, he's going to be mixing it on Saturday up against, you know, Cunnington and Simpkin, LDU. And he's not going to look out of place. Like, he'll be in there fighting for the footy, and he'll do some things, I reckon, that'll get everyone excited.
Yeah, well, the Crows are a really good side, as we said, and he absolutely shone in that game. He's got size, he's got skills, he's got pace. That was the thing that surprised me more than anything watching him against the Crows, is that he's got burst on him, which is really exciting. Yep. So no shock that he's debuting, but a lot of excitement around what he can produce this season and in the future. You know, he just looms as a franchise player for West Coast in the years to come, which is great. And then Noah Long, Campbell Chesser and Jaden Hunt announced as debutants as well. Jaden Hunt is obviously one that's expected. He's a ready-made player who'll give us some much-needed pace. Campbell Chesser looked likely for a round 1 debut, just considering he's a first-round draft pick, but still a touch of surprise, only because he hasn't played a senior game yet, Drewy, and missed a lot of footy. And it's not like he lit up the preseason. You know, he got a bit of it, and you could see his class, but it's not as if he was an accumulator of ball, but they're throwing him straight in there, which is nice to see. But Noah Long is the surprise in his first season, and he gets a game in round 1. He might be the sub. Let's not get too carried away with where he'll line up, because he could be the sub, but he is going to be named, which is really exciting. What did you make of the Chesser and Long announcements?
Yeah, so I love that they've got Chesser in there. I love the show of faith. Like, yeah, we back you. We wanted you in the draft, and they were really meticulous with the recovery. Like, Tom Cole had almost the same injury, but was back training a lot sooner, to the point where they thought, Cole, could we take him off the long-term injury list at the end of last season? They opted not to in the end, but Chesser was way further back. So they've been cautious with him. And as you said, he hasn't smashed down the door during the preseason. They've integrated him into the team, and he's played, you know, managed minutes and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, if he's ready to go and has been studying and training to play that wing role, then, you know, let's get him in there and let's see what he can do. So that really excites me. And we've, because we've invested so much in him, I think there's a thirst to see what he can do.
Yeah.
All reports he's a great kid, so I'm sure that he's going to pay us back in spades. Noah Long, we were getting whispers, was it about a month ago, that he was ahead of where they thought that he would be. Yep. And Nick Nat said in a press conference that he reminded Nick of a young Mark Lacroix.
Figure out.
In the way that he plays, which, from a West Coast point of view, is massive raps, one of our greatest.
Yeah.
Speaking to Benny Waterworth, who's my draft go-to guy, he says there's a bit of Cody Waitman about him.
Yep.
So flair and proper forward craft, and then even though he's a medium to small, he can compete in the air as well as on the ground. But, which is perfect for us. So, the fact that he's sort of come seemingly from a long way back gives me a lot of faith that, the coaching staff are pretty confident that he's going to be able to come in and play a role for us. So I'm really excited to see Noah Long. We love the 44 at West Coast. It's got a nice history, that jumper number. So, yeah, he's hopefully going to excite us over the season. So the four we've covered off.
Yeah, I love a specialist pick with like a pick 50. Like rather than just taking another mid, like you actually take like a specialist small forward. And it's such an important position. Like so many clubs, and we've been guilty of it in the past. You think, just, take mids and we'll put another one down there. But guys who have a true knack for finding the goals, and it feels like Noah Long has that, you don't just develop them. You've either got that knack or you don't, right? And so, Jamie Cripps is getting on. We need someone else down there who can just sit around Oscar Allen and snap 40 goals a season. And Noah Long has the potential to do that. So it's looking promising in that aspect. Yeah, he gets the number 44. That is really handy. I saw Harry Barnett got the number 30, Peter Matera's number. How's that for the youngster, the young beanpole?
Do you reckon he knows who Peter Matera is? He probably would know now.
I was hoping someone has told him just how good Peter Matera was.
Yeah, I'm sure they get a bit of a history lesson when they come into the club. It's funny seeing Junior Rioli back in Port colours in that practice game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and in that game, the standout moment for me was the Elijah Hewitt snap. So Jinby from last year's draft pool debuts, Noah Long does as well, Chester from last year. So Hewitt misses out, but it doesn't seem like he's that far away. Barnett we knew would be a fair way off, but he's a number one ruckman for the future. And then there's Virgil, who I think I pronounced it correctly. I'm not sure if I have or not, but he's an interesting player. Looks like he could play anywhere on the field almost, like half back, wing, half forward. But he'll take a while to find his exact spot. Good skills. Looks like he's pretty well built. Has a little bit of pace there, but it looks like his kicking is his real strength and being able to be versatile and moved all over the field. So he needs to wait a little bit longer, but I don't think it'll be long before Elijah Hewitt debuts as well when you consider the amount of young players they've named for round one.
Yeah, and Hewitt could be a good candidate to be sub a few times early for us, impact player, get him sort of used to being part of the system. If that's how, they see, hopefully he doesn't make his debut as a sub, but I think he'd be a good candidate to be the 23rd man a bit for us this season. That role probably suits him, and someone like a Petruccelli, even Long, who might be the sub this week, as you mentioned. So, yeah, a lot of excitement. That's what we want, Garby. Like, we're crying out for it. We said that the list isn't in a great position to rebuild because we have so many senior players, on long contracts. But, just seeing a smattering of young players being put into the team, that gives us a lot of hope that we're moving in the right direction.
Okay. We're going to go into some Twitter questions in a moment, and one of them is a concerning one, or surrounds concerns in regards to a player. So a question without notice, Drewy, before we get onto our burning questions later on, before we get onto the concerning member of the Eagles squad, who are you most excited about? Which player are you most excited about this season and you think is set for a big campaign?
Well, can I give you the easiest answer?
Yeah.
Oscar Allen.
Okay.
We haven't seen him for 570 days play an AFL game. And before he had the serious foot injury, he was, in my view, he was one of the top 5 most exciting prospects in the AFL, if not the most exciting prospect.
Yeah.
Could kick 60, could set up 30, could play almost any position on the ground, future captain of the club. And, it could all, I think it could all happen really quickly for Oscar Allen. His ascension to being one of the best players in the competition will hopefully match our rise up the ladder as we reinvent the list and get more young players in, and as Hewitt and Jimby and Chesser, becomes their team, he's going to be at the forefront of that. So if he has a huge season and takes steps forward in his development, I won't be shocked at all. I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah. No, I share that sentiment. I do. And I'm excited about Jeremy McGovern this season. He looks fit. If he can just stay on the park for the entire campaign, I think he can have a really big year. And let's be honest, he's going to get plenty of opportunities, you would think, to produce his best.
Yeah.
There's Liam Duggan, who I like a lot, Tom Cole, who's back. Elliot Yeo, it's just a matter of whether he stays injury-free. Tim Kelly's such an interesting one. But the player that excites me the most is Liam Ryan. He looks fitter than he has since his All-Australian year. He looks motivated. I've picked him up in a couple of fantasy teams. I've always thought that Liam Ryan can be a good fantasy player, even though the forward line may be starved of the ball at times. I think he's got the ability to be a good forward in fantasy football, because I think he can get up the ground and take marks and get going and kick goals. And I feel like this might be his year. He just looks to be in a really good space at the moment. And I'm excited about what Flying can do. I think he can, along with Oscar and Jack, be a three-pronged, provide a three-pronged level of dominance in the forward line, and everyone can feed off the three of them, not just Darling and Allen. I think Liam Ryan's set to go back to his best.
Yeah, so in 2018, he was excellent in his first full season at the club, and helped us win that flag. But then I reckon his best period of football outside of that was when we were injury hit and he was almost the man on his own up forward. And I think a bit of extra space without JK there will suit him, and we might see him take, you might get back to taking a few pack marks and owning that forward 50. So I think he's trending up this season if he's fit and motivated. I reckon he's going to have the space and have the opportunity to have a really big year.
Yeah. Let's get on to some Twitter questions. So this is the concerning issue, I think, for the squad. It comes from Greg Mullins. It's an obvious one, but it's a pertinent one. He's interested in our thoughts on Andrew Gaff. He supposedly plays under duress in 2022 and 2021. He's meant to be back to full fitness. He was ordinary in both preseason games. He thinks his spot comes under severe pressure from younger players this season. I couldn't agree more. I think Andrew Gaff is going to really struggle to keep his spot in the team. And I wonder if he lasts the season or whether he potentially pulls the pin, because, we were told by Simo that he's back to full fitness, that he's back running at his best, but we didn't see any of that in the preseason game against Adelaide.
Yeah, that's concerning, because I thought that he would come out sort of firing if he was back to full fitness. But we'd see, 2018, 2019 Gaff or something close to that. But the evidence so far is that he's not going to be able to recapture his old self, his old form. So he knows that wing role so well. He's been playing it for us for 10 years. So, he's kind of got that real estate locked away for a little while. But are we going to be better off having Luke Edwards and Campbell Chesser as our two wingmen, in the long run? So, yeah, I can see a world where he's out of the team for sure.
Yeah, I know. I can see that.
I just think it's as simple as that.
Yeah,
is that he there is a large question mark over whether he's in the best 22.
Yeah. And if he played under duress last season, then fair play to him, and he's a great of the club. We know that. A fantastic footballer. It just looks like he's really struggling, and he has done for a couple of seasons. Daniel Rimkus asks, who's the first senior player that will be tipped out of the 23 and banished to early retirement in the waffle? And Andrew Gaff's the only one that really comes to mind at the moment. I can't see anyone else, Drewy, that stands out other than Gaff for that nomination.
Yeah, it's not going to be Shuey. And I've got quite a lot of confidence in the skipper this year that they'll get his workload, his body right. And I think switching between halfback and middle and bench time, they don't need to overload him with minutes because they'll have the four bench and the sub. So it's not going to be Boots. And then, I think Sheed has a bounce back year, and obviously Nick Nat's so important and integral to the way we play. It's not going to be McGovern. So as far as our senior players go, I think Shannon Hearn can play 5 more years at the level he's playing. He's a tractor. He'll just keep doing what he does. So yeah, I think Gaff is the candidate there.
Yeah, really good question as well from Out Breezy. Which area is the biggest concern going into the season? Forwards, mids, or defence? He has his own thoughts, but he's curious what we think. For me, it's the midfield. I think it's very Yo Kelly dependent. And if those two don't produce their best or get injuries, we are very light on in there. Dom Sheed, there's a question mark as to the level he can perform at. He looks fit, which is great. I think he can play out the season, but what Dom Sheed are we getting? We don't quite know. Shuey's moving to halfback. Jimby's a rookie. We've spoken about Gaff at length. Jai Cully's an interesting one. I think he can contribute. Bemused as to why he was left out of the final practice game, but I get the feeling he'll play a lot this season, but he's still very young and he's more of a tackling defensive player right now. If Yo and Kelly aren't at their best, I think our midfield fades away quickly. So that's my biggest area of concern.
Yeah, I wonder if Duggan gets a few more midfield minutes if required. I can see Cully being the sub on Saturday and getting him into the mix, but perhaps he's not in the best 22. Just on the ruck, Garby, so Achilles soreness for Nick Nat. Bailey Williams had hamstring awareness. I reckon Bailey Williams is probably going to be right to play. Do you play Jamison and Bailey together, or do you pick, say, Jake Waterman as a pinch hit ruck and just say, and give the keys to Bailey early?
Well, I think Jamison plays. So I've got my 22 based on the 4 debutants being named. So I've got Hearn, Barras, Cole, Duggan, Gov, Shuey, halfbacks. I've got Gaff in the team. With Sheed in the middle, Jaden Hunt on a wing. So Gaff, Sheed, Hunt across the middle. Half forward, Cripps, Darling, Ryan. Then Jermaine Jones, Oscar Allen and Waterman as the 3 full forwards. Bailey Williams in the ruck with Yo and Kelly. And then interchange Jinby, Chesser. I've got Jamison in, so I'm playing 2 rucks. I don't think Bailey Williams can do it on his own. They want to play Oscar Allen forward, and I don't see Waterman doing a job. So Jinby, Chesser, Jamison. And then I've got Noah Long as the sub, with one of Cully or Petch being named and one being left out.
Yeah, I think we've got the exact same 23, just a couple of things juggled around in terms of positional play. But I don't have Jamison in my. I've only got 1 ruck.
Okay.
Do you think with the sub, the Eagles will play 2 rucks this year, knowing they can sub 1 off?
Well, I guess they might play Jamison. They could play Jamison as a sub. That could be the move. And then you're playing, Long, Petch and Cully. Sorry, you're playing just one of Petch and Cully, and then Long's in there. Who would get the nod then out of Petch and Cully if it's Jamison as the sub and Long, Chester, Jinby as the other interchange players?
Probably, I think Petruccelli to round out the forward line.
Yeah. I like Cully. I can't work out his omission from the Adelaide game. Simo spoke about him in such glowing terms in the preseason, said he'd cut his own handoff to play round one. He's set to go. It would have been a top 20 pick. Then he doesn't play the final practice game. Why?
Yeah, there's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be something. We just don't know what it is. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see him involved in the 23. Like, I've got him in my best 22. I'm just judging on what we've seen in terms of him being left out. That puts a doubt over him because it's Spencer. That was supposed to be some sort of dress rehearsal.
Maybe it was just a little bit of, we've given him a massive pump up. He's had a great preseason, but, let's just pull him back a little bit. I don't know.
Yep. But
the midfield needs him in there because it's, as we said, it's thin and he provides the defensive option. He'll go all day. Yeah, I want Jai Cully in the team. I really like him. And I think he will play a lot of footy this year, but if he doesn't play round one, that would be a big surprise, that's for sure. Question from Austin, a good one. What are your expectations for the year? If we finish bottom four, but we get 15 to 20 games into Jinby, Chesser, Long, Hewitt, is that a pass or should we be aiming higher? What's a pass then for you, Drewy?
A pass is, I'm looking at development and the way that the team plays, effort, that sort of thing. I'm not too worried about wins and losses. If we play a good brand of footy and are competitive and the young players are playing, then I couldn't care less if we're 3-20.
Yeah, I think because of the amount of guns we still have on the list, my threshold for a pass is a bit higher. So my threshold for a pass is 10th to 14th because we still have so many A-graders who maybe aren't A-graders anymore, but on reputation. So that's my pass. But if we finish 14th to 18th and the youngsters really look promising and we do move the ball well, then I can handle that. But I think we need to finish outside the bottom four for a pass. I think it's disappointing if we're bottom four, even though that is my expectation, because I think we still have a lot of top-notch contributors. Yeah,
so I think our back 6 to 8 players are so good that, the wins and the results will come just by virtue of quality players. Like, I think Barras and McGovern will be in this All-Australian squad of 44.
We're running out of time, Drewy. A final thought from you before we sign off for the North Melbourne game.
We start with a win, Garby. We beat Clarko and his mob of hacks. We're 1-0.
That'd be nice. We'll talk more about Adam Simpson next week, along with plenty other burning issues around the West Coast Eagles. Let's go, boys. Have a win in round one.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.